Hello and welcome back to the Yoga Teacher's Hustle. Today I'm going to talk about online platforms and streaming and teaching classes on a digital level. I know not everybody uses the same platforms because I know there's a Zoom and then there's one from Microsoft, and I know there are other ones out there. I personally use Zoom because it's what was kind of shown to me when lockdown and COVID sort of happened first off. I'm one of those people that when I get software and I learn to use it and I learn it well, I know it well. But when you put something new in front of me, it takes me time to rejig in my brain to understand it. So Zoom was my first one I went with, and that's the one I've kind of stuck with. So that I will mention that quite a lot, but it is kind of relevant for all platforms, the information that I'm giving. So when it comes to teaching online, obviously it's very different from being in a classroom. When you're in a classroom, you kind of feed off the energy of people. You can see what people are doing. You can often, sometimes if I'm doing a class, I'll go in and I'll say, I have an idea for the classes, but is there anything anyone in particular wants to work on today? So certain aspects and things, and you can feed with that. But when you're working either online to a set number of people that you have every week, you might be able to do that. But if you've got quite a lot of people and you've got quite a lot of new people, or you just run your business online with people that you've never met in the physical world before, it can be it can be a very, very different experience. No less enjoyable and fulfilling, but just different. Because you have to remember that they're seeing you, you're seeing them, but what you can see of them is probably only like an inch by inch square, and for you to take their safety into consideration and be able to watch their every move, you're going to need to stop what you're doing, move nearer your own screen to check each person to make sure everybody's doing it properly. And then this is where you start to work out what kind of structure of a class do you want to do. So you might be somebody that just does a general class. You want to cover hips this week, you want to cover the root chakra, you want to cover balance, and you just put together a general routine, and you're not going to make everybody individually do something on the screen where you come close to the screen and you look at everyone individually. You say, you've got to take responsibility for your own movements. I can't see you properly. Please listen to my direction carefully. And then you produce a class for them. But you may want to think about actually doing a proper technical class. So you might want to show people how to do things in depth, with in-depth ability. You might want to pre-record you moving through one of the particular moves in depth and explaining it really, really, really well, so that you can actually stop what you're doing and say, right, I'm going to come to the screen now and we're going to go through, each person's going to try it and give it a go. I'm just going to watch what you do, and then afterwards I'm going to send you this pre-recorded clip, one I've done before, so you can practice it at home. So next week when we come in, I can reassess you, I can watch what you're doing, or you can send me your videos of you practicing at home and I can send you feedback. So there's lots of different ways to go about structuring a class when you're doing online stuff to make sure that, one, things are being done safely, or two, the students understand that you can't necessarily help them as much as you'd like to because you physically can't move them to put in position, because you're not looking at a big vision of them, you're only looking at them on the screen. So whenever you're sitting down and you're planning online classes, it's really worth just kind of thinking about what approach you want to take and whether you want to mix up that approach and do different things each week, or you're just somebody that's going to do a generalized class and you're going to tell people each week that they're kind of responsible for how they perceive the information. I'm going to go back to that in a moment, because with regards to recording the classes afterwards and etc. So they're just things something to think about, and we'll go back in there in a moment. But one of the things we do need to talk about when it comes to going online is the equipment that we use. Now, this is a really difficult one, because I know during lockdown I was working in a studio environment, and all of a sudden we're told we can't see people in person anymore. There's a bit of a panic. Most of the teachers that I know hadn't been online before. The classes had come to a standstill. Obviously, that's my income from working as a yoga instructor. The income wasn't coming in because I wasn't teaching the classes. And rather randomly, I spoke to a fellow instructor, and she said to me, well, I've gone onto Zoom and this is how you go about it, and this is what we're going to be doing. And I thought, wow, that's brilliant. That's just what I needed to hear. So that was great to hear, but it was a real learning curve because I had no idea where to start. I had a decent laptop, which I use now for all my stuff. I knew it had a built-in camera, but the issue with the built-in web camera is it's okay, but the quality of it is not as good as it could be. And I wanted to fix an external camera to the computer to be able to for people to have a clearer picture. Now, this was my drama, and I don't know if people can relate to it, but it's just something to be aware of. I have a Canon 80D DSLR camera, really great, and you can adjust it, and it's just fantastic. You know, it's got the auto focus and things like that. And I managed to download the utilities software, ESO utility software, so it meant that my laptop could understand the camera and I could feed the camera view through my Zoom feed. So there are options to that. Sometimes some computers, some laptops don't necessarily need this extra software to be able to support an external camera. I know with webcams, they're quite easy to just sort of plug in. They're kind of designed to work with the computer almost straight away. The problem I had with a webcam is that for me to put it in a certain position to get the whole of my body in and for the people to be able to see me properly, it looked like I was in a goldfish bowl. So it wasn't, although the picture was clear enough, it kind of had the rounded edges like a goldfish bowl. So I kind of learnt quite quickly that unless I was very close to the camera, that webcam wasn't going to work for me. And this is another problem. The camera that I had to make sure was far enough away from me to get the whole of my body in. And that wasn't too bad because the way it connects to the computer, I could have the laptop closer to me and the camera further away so that I could make sure I got the whole of me in. But because of the size of my room, I couldn't get the camera far enough back to be able to get the whole of me in. So I had a choice of either putting it outside the front door and filming me through the door, or I had the choice of, you know, having to work out, do they really need to see my hands? As long as they can see my feet and the rest of the body, are my hands that important? Am I going to be down on the mat mainly this class, so I don't need to make sure that they can see the very, very top half of my body when my arms are in the air? You know, as long as they can see me sideways and they can see the length of the mat and they can see most of my body, was it important for me to see, was it important to see the hands? So, you know, you think that this is a simple camera operation, just pop the camera there, stick it, but it's not, because everything you do has to showcase your ability and your class to the best of its ability. So if you want to link in an external camera, you've got to make sure that, one, if it's a webcam, that's not going to give you that goldfish bowl look. If it's another camera, you've got far enough distance, because you know the lens, I had the best lens I could, but if I went for a smaller size lens, it meant that it was back into the goldfish bowl of my DSLR. So that's just something that really needs to be considered when you're working with the camera. The problem I had with the actual camera that was built into my laptop was that when as it kind of got into winter and it kind of got darker, if I was on the mat and I was quite low and I wasn't moving as much, the camera kind of started to go dark, the picture started to go dark, and as soon as I started to move, the light adjusted itself, the autofocus came in, and I was nice and bright again. But the minute it was in a more sedate position, it was almost, I could see the screen going dark and people couldn't see the outline of my body quite so much. So obviously with a DSLR or with any camera, I'm not saying you have to have a DSLR, but with any camera, you can set that camera up. You don't have to have it on autofocus. You can kind of get the focus right, and it can just be on you. You can have the lighting set up so that there's enough lighting coming in through the lens, and you're not going to have that problem of it getting darker. So when you're setting, so it's we're only on really the first topic, and that's the camera. But when you're setting up the camera, if you want to have a professional looking feed, there's lots of things you need to consider. If it's summertime, the light's probably going to be okay. If it's either side of summertime, not quite into winter, and you haven't got extra lighting, then that's going to affect the light of your feed. If you've got an external camera, where are you going to put it? Can you get all of yourself in? If you use a web camera, is that going to make you look like you're in a goldfish bowl? So that's just the camera alone. Which brings me on to lighting. To start with, when I first kind of went into it, I got an old cardboard box. I opened it up so it was flat. I covered it in tin foil, and I put a very bright daylight bulb in front of it, and let that reflect back onto me, which actually was quite effective. And I kept that through the whole of COVID. I still used that in the background, especially level with my face. So when I was on the mat, it reflected the light onto my face when I was facing it. it's not necessarily professional, but it is got that professional approach of having that light reflection. You can actually buy, I think, on eBay or Amazon, they're like fold-out ones or little round pop-up ones of light reflection. You can get them in silver and gold, and it gives you a certain hue. See, I'm not a photographer. I'm a yoga instructor, so I've had to learn all these new things. And some of you out there might be very, very good with cameras and lighting, so you've got to be thinking this bit's, not useful for you. But for those that don't, there is that tin foil is just as effective. I can tell you, it really worked for me. But I actually ended up buying, and I wonder, I'll try and show you some pictures of that. I actually bought some lighting, which were 2 umbrellas with lighting in the middle and silver on the inside on stands, so I could have them at different height. And when I had my normal light on from the ceiling light of the house on, it seemed bright, but when I actually put the camera on, it was very, very dark. But as soon as I put this lighting on, not only did it lighten up the room, lighten up my body, but my facial features, everything just stood out, and the camera seemed to like it more. I think I paid for 2. It was a pack that had bulbs, the umbrellas, the stands, and in a nice bag, and I think I paid something like £30 to £40 for those 2, and I still use them now. The bulbs are still very good, very effective, and I think I just bought them off eBay. Yeah, I'm pretty sure, but I think they were there on Amazon as well and things. But yeah, they're great, real investment. And when I've done sort of static photo shoots for the website, things like that, I've used them and they've been really effective. So sometimes investing in better, not necessarily the best quality lighting, but in lighting in such, that was enough for me. And actually I've lent it out to friends who've used it for photo shoots and said it's been really effective as well. So getting your lighting right is really important. If you're just going to do the one-off class here and there because you're sick or you've got COVID and you're not unwell to teach, but you can't actually be around people and you're just going to do it on your laptop, maybe you don't need to bother with this. But if you're thinking about taking your practice and your studio online, and that's going to be a permanent thing, then these are things that need to be considered, because you're not just going to be teaching in summer, you're going to be teaching all year round, and it needs to be as effective all year round rather than just when the lighting is good. So that's just something else to be considered. So when you're doing that, make sure that your camera and your lighting are kind of working with each other and they're happy together. I had a big problem with internet connection. I ended up having to buy a lead that went into into the internet cable socket, the phone socket in my house, into my laptop, because the internet signal kept dropping out. And sometimes the internet signal was so bad, Wi-Fi related, that it got to the point where I ended up having to refund people for classes that they'd attended, because halfway through the class it'd go out. Sometimes it'd come back and people were like, that's okay, it was only once. But when it was happening all the time, or I just couldn't get a signal back, those people have paid for a service, they didn't get that service, and I ended up, if you've refunded, so if you've got 10 people and they're all paying you £7 just to be in that class with you, and your class fails within the first sort of 10 minutes, that's £70 you've got to pay back. Yes, of course, you haven't necessarily got the overheads because you're in your own home, but that is still money that you've got to pay back out that you didn't realise that was going to be a loss to you. You've accounted that for your weekly intake and you've not got it because you've had to refund. And I did refund, because at the end of the day, these students, I want them to see me as a reputable teacher that's got morals and standards, and I wanted them to come back. I wanted them to say, most of them actually, when it didn't work properly, would say, I tell you what, I'll use that towards my next class with you, or can we reschedule a class tomorrow that we don't normally have, and I did another sort of class the following day on a time which I wouldn't normally do, to accommodate these people. So there are ways around it, but the whole point is, if you're going to be doing stuff on the internet, you need to have good internet access. You need to have a stream of internet access. It's not going to be interrupted. It's not going to make you look too pixelated, because that happened quite a bit. It's not going to cut off the sound at any point. So do make sure, if you're doing things via a Wi-Fi, you're near your hub, your router, and you're having constant sort of stream of internet. I know there's lots of different providers, but I did get to the point where when I was teaching a class, to make sure that there wasn't any problems, I'd actually tell the other people in the house that could they just stay off their equipment and the Wi-Fi just for the hour that I was teaching, so that it wasn't going to affect that feed, which thankfully they were really good about, and they did do that. But internet connection, you think, oh well, I've got internet in the house, it's fine. But if you've got slow internet connection, it's something you really need to consider if you want to take this online professionally on a long-term basis. I just mentioned about the internet connection and sound. Now, yes, obviously the internet, if it kept dropping out, the sound would go and I'd freeze. But sound was a big problem for me in the beginning because, first of all, being a bit naive and never being in front of an online audience before, I assumed that the laptop sound was going to be okay. And I learned very quickly on Zoom you could adjust the microphone and how the microphone operated and the level. But I realised that it wasn't very crisp and it wasn't very clear. And I'd have people saying, it was a good class, but I couldn't really hear you. And I had to have my computer or my phone or whatever they're watching up really, really loud. And it was a bit fuzzy, the background, you could hear that white noise in the background. So I invested in a Rode microphone, which would normally sit on top of the camera, but I had it on a long lead all the way to the computer. However, please don't make this mistake. What I did is I plugged it in, assuming that would make this that would hear the sound and my students could hear it. But what it did is, because I had my microphone slot in the side of my laptop. I'm sorry if I'm not very technically turned, because I'm not very technically turned. I'm just telling you what I've learned. So, whatever the real proper technical names, but this slot, the microphone that would go in the hole. When I plugged the microphone in, because it was designed for headphones and things, it didn't work. And if I plugged my headphones in, I could hear them, but they couldn't hear me. So I was in this very difficult position of sound v hearing v receiving. And I ended up having to buy a Y-shape adapter. It was a very small Y-shape adapter where it goes into the hole in the side, and then it's got a little nook that comes off it that's another hole for your microphone, a little nook that comes off it for your headphones. So I had to plug that in and then plug the microphone into that double jack. I think it's called a double jack, so that I could receive, so that they could hear me. But that was fine. They could hear me just fine when I plugged the microphone in, but I couldn't hear them. So I had to make sure that I had a speaker set up. So in this double jack, I had to make sure that there was a microphone attached to it and a speaker to attach to it, so that they could hear me and I could hear them. I couldn't just plug the microphone in and hear them. It interrupted that. So I had to do it. I had to make sure that there were speakers set up with it every week and a microphone set up with it every week. So this is a big deal when it comes to your sound quality. What also happened, it seemed to happen, sometimes had a feedback loop because of the speakers and the way it was. And I'd suddenly get this notification up on my Zoom screen to say that there was a problem with the noise and the sound, and they'd mute Zoom because they thought that there was too much feedback. And then halfway through the class, I'd have to say, just bear with me a second, I've just got to clear something on my screen. And it was this noise to say, we've muted you because of this feedback. So this is a big deal. If your laptop hasn't got a very good microphone and you can't just plug a microphone in and hope that it picks everything up, you may need a double jack to plug your microphone in through. But if you have a double jack, you also need to plug speakers into it as well, so you can hear them, which obviously is the best way to sort of make sure that they can hear you and you can hear them. But I found when I was setting up classes and taking them down, packing away these speakers in this microphone was my biggest, not dread, but just every time I did it, I'd think, oh goodness, I've got to do this again. So it's something that needs to be done. I just wanted to pop up my laptop and go, but I couldn't. And this is something you need to be considerate of. When it comes to a microphone, you want a microphone with a good range. What I did with mine is I had a really long lead on the end of my Rode microphone into my laptop, into this jack, and I had it quite close to the mat, but out of shot of the camera, so that it didn't matter which position I was in, it could hear me and it could pick up my voice. Now, I think most of you might be thinking, well, why don't you wear a mic pack? Well, there is problems with that again. First of all, I know now that the Rode 200 mic pack is very good quality and a great thing to have, and it really is good receiving. But at the time, I had no idea about mic packs, and I ended up buying, this is where the perils of buying cheap. I know I said the lighting, you got some good lighting for cheap, but I bought a cheap microphone wireless mic pack, and it was appalling. So I tried to attach the mic pack to me with the microphone and then the receiver into the laptop, and because it was cheap, it just kept cutting out and the sound kept going. Now with an actual proper, well, I'm not saying Rode's the only microphones out there. What I'm trying to say is that if you have got a wireless microphone, if it's going to cost over £100, it's going to be worth it. If it's under £100, I would be a little bit dubious about the quality of it. That's just my personal opinion. That's not to badmouth any particular manufacturer, but that's how I found that if it the kind of more expensive is, the better quality it is. Also, I found the difficulty I found with wearing a mic pack, and I find this very difficult when I'm recording videos that are pre-recorded that I just put on my YouTube channel, is that your mic pack has to go, your microphone has to go into that pack that's on your body. But I would put the mic pack either on the front of my body, and if I leant forward, it would squash the mic pack, might turn it off, might cause a problem. If I put it on the back of my body, it meant that I couldn't lie down because the mic pack was in the way. So I'd have to plan classes or videos based on where this mic pack was sitting on my body so that it didn't get in the way. What would have probably been the best thing to do would probably have it on my arm, but then you would have been able, in a separate sort of holder on my arm. So I wasn't sort of leaning on it or moving around on it, but then you would have been able to see it. So that's an issue I had. If anybody has a solution to that, and they've been through this before, do let me know, because I would love to know. Because I did try kind of popping it inside, down my chest, in my bra, kind of in between, and that was okay. But I did lean on it, and it did sort of changed the settings on it. So swings and roundabouts, isn't it? I mean, having a mic pack is better quality. That your voice sounds crisper. As you turn your head away from the microphone that's on a lead, you're going to get less quality if it's attached to your body. However, one of the things that you will notice if you ever watch any of my videos is when I had a mic pack on and I dropped my head forward and it was on my chest, it would suddenly become very loud while I was talking. Halfway through a class, I wasn't thinking, "Oh, I'm too loud." I'm just talking in my normal voice, but it became very loud. And then as I lifted my head up, it'd go back to normal again. So, I mean, there are ways around that. When you're editing videos, you can actually take that clip and change the sound and make it a little bit quieter so it's not so loud. But that's just something to consider. If you're somebody that is wanting to, this is going to be a really, really long podcast, I'm afraid, so just bear with me a second while I'm going through it, because there's quite a lot to get information to give out on this. If you're somebody that does want to do this on a permanent basis, but you cannot always be live with your class, so you're somebody that wants to pre-record classes and then feed them through the YouTube, feed them through your Zoom, or feed them through your website to appear live, or scheduled or things like that. There is a piece of software called OBS. Now, I can't remember off the top of my head what it stands for, but maybe I'll put that in the link to the OBS site. But it's something broadcasting system. That's really bad, isn't it? I can't remember. But OBS is something where you can actually layer videos on top of each other. So you can have a video with an extra video going off in the window in the corner of it. You can put words on it and things. But one of the most amazing things with OBS is that you can schedule a live feed. So you can actually schedule it to feed from OBS, a pre-recorded video, all the way into your Zoom when you're ready. So you don't even have to be present. You can just get people to log on Zoom, and it will do it through YouTube, through your Microsoft, and it will prepare that. I'm not going to say I'm an expert at that, because I learned how to do that, and then I didn't do it for a while. And then when I came back to doing it, it was confusing for me, and I've had to reteach myself. So I do keep forgetting, so I can't give you a tutorial or talk about how that is done, because every time I leave it for a bit, I come back and I've forgotten how to do it. But there is ways and means of doing that, and there's so many YouTube videos and channels on here that will explain that OBS for you. But it really, really is a useful thing, especially if you want to do constant classes that appear live, but you can't be live all the time. And also, it's one of those things where you can have old classes that you've had before, and you can schedule them to come out, 6 months down the line. We're doing a hip class today, and you pull that hip class out from your repertoire and you feed it live again, because it's not like they've got a video of these a library of these videos, because you're not like you're offering them to them all the time, unless they're on a subscription based thing. So you can feed it as though it's just been filmed yesterday. So that's something really, really good to remember. Also, I found that with Zoom, you can record the classes. Now, when you're recording classes, obviously you cannot have any of your other students in the recording if you're going to put things out on YouTube without permission. So I found that when I was recording classes, I would mute the class so they couldn't interfere with the feed. I would pin my video so it was only me that was being shown. I would cut out at the beginning and at the end where we may have had a conversation, and just chopped off those bits. So it was just me doing the actual class, and I'd have videos of just me doing those classes, which I then put on YouTube and then said to the students, we did this at the weekend. Now, here's the video of it if you want to keep practicing it. So I've actually put them on my YouTube. So you might notice on some of my YouTube channel videos, the quality is a live feed quality. So it's a little bit grainy, not great, but the quality of the yoga is right for the students. It was what they had at the time. And I've managed to put quite a few videos on YouTube without having to go to extra mile to record extra videos, because I was already teaching these classes and I just recorded them as I was going. Chopped off the people that weren't meant to be there. And also what was great about that is that I always kind of tend to do a warm-up, a middle, more challenging section, and then a cool down or meditation or whatever at the end. And I've managed to chop some of those videos down so that the meditation at the end is a separate video, or the warm-up at the beginning is a separate video. So I've got 3 videos out of that, not just the full hour, because I teach for an hour and not everybody wants an hour-long video, but they might want just the middle section for 15 minutes or what have you. So that's being able to use that to be able to record is another advantage when it comes to doing live classes. And there's quite a lot of software you can use to edit videos and crop videos. Now, I only know of 2 which I use on a regular basis, and that's the one that video software that comes with Microsoft Windows, and that is free, and then a paid piece of software called VideoPad. And VideoPad is really very, very good. The only issue I've had with VideoPad when I've been editing videos is when I've finish them and I export them from the VideoPad software, the exportation can take a little bit of time, like a long time sometimes. So sometimes the less you manipulate these videos, the quicker the exportation time will. But also you can edit these things in OBS as well. So if you learn OBS and you're better at it than I am, you can also edit videos within that as well, which is really, really good. So that's something. That's just an added bonus. If you're going to do online stuff, you can record it. It's just an added bonus. What I will say though, what I can say about Zoom is that you can have up to 100 people attending a meeting for 40 minutes free of charge. So if you just want to go for the free package that Zoom offers, you can do a 40-minute class no longer for up to 100 people. So if you're only going to do half an hour classes and you're going to have it up to 100 people, or you're going to maybe feed through from a different things from, I don't know how that affects with OBS, but you might be able to get away with the free package. However, you can pay about £15. I don't know what that equates to sort of in American dollars, but you can pay about £15 a month, and you can have you can have as much, you can be on there for as long as you like. And I can't remember quite how many participants you can have, but you can have hundreds. There's a lot more people available for hour, beyond an hour. If you're on the free package and you're going to do one-on-ones, or you're going to talk to 3 people at a time, you could be on that meeting for 3 hours if you want, for as long as you want, and it's not going to charge you. But it's when you get over sort of about 3 or 4 people and over 40 minutes that's when there's problems to do with the charging. So do look at the packages. I'm only talking about Zoom because I know Zoom, but do look at the packages options. That if you can get away with the free version and you can do your one-on-ones and they're going to give you free amount of time for your one-on-ones when you're doing bespoke packages, that's amazing. So always go with that. There is a big problem though when it comes to insurance and it comes to online things. Now, I know from my friends that are instructors that if I go online and I teach online, I have a maximum amount of people I can teach, and my insurance isn't covered. So I'm going to break that down a little bit more comfortably for you. If I teach 12 people online in a live feed class, that's okay. My insurance is covered. That's the limit that my insurance company has set for me and for anybody else that wants to Zoom through their insurance with that company. That's just my insurance company. That's not every insurance company, but that's mine. So that is something I have to be wary of when I'm teaching classes. If I pre-record a class and schedule it and I put a disclaimer at the beginning, say this is a pre-recorded class, please use for entertainment purposes only, and I schedule it to go out on a Facebook feed or a YouTube feed or whatever, my insurance, anybody can watch it. My insurance covers me, and it doesn't affect me at all. So it's only when I'm doing the live feed classes I can have no more than 12 people present. Now this is slightly different with the studio that I work for, because they actually had their own insurance, so, and you could have a lot more. I think I ended up having sort of 25 people joining classes and things, and that was totally acceptable, and the insurance covered it, but it didn't affect my insurance because it was through the studio's insurance themselves. But if you are thinking about going online and doing online things, you do need to talk to your insurance about how that is affected. And I know there were so many people that halfway through lockdown, so many teachers I was talking to, and they said, oh, I didn't realise it affected my insurance. And when they came back to me, they'd say, yeah, I'm not allowed to do any more than 10, I've got less than you, or I can do up to 15. So check with your insurance what you can do online for live feed classes and how that affects pre-recorded classes. And this is something that you really need to be vigilant of, because if you're teaching an online class and you cannot be present and look after those people, and someone gets an injury and then they claim against your insurance and you haven't read the rules and regulations of your insurance and how many you can have, you're going to be liable and you're going to be paying out, and that's going to affect your insurance in the future. So that is something really, really, really important. With online things, it is great. It's great to have an online community, because you can actually start to offer subscriptions. You can start to offer, you can develop an app or buy into an app, and you can have access, give your clients access to that, especially if they've got a subscription. But consistency is key here. One of the biggest problems I had is I had a lot of following, and I had a lot of people that were interested while I was scheduling classes every week, and I was turning up and I was consistent with it. But as COVID kind of left and I had to go back to my sort of normal life, I couldn't offer as many classes, and obviously that affected my numbers, and that changed. I mean, my numbers were affected anyway when I went online. I had nowhere near as many classes or as many numbers. I mean, it massively affected my income. But if you've got a consistency, if you have a plan of action, if you have consistency, if you know that your equipment is good and your feed's going to be good, and you understand all the aspects we've spoken about, there is no reason why you can't become online and make a real good profit and living off it. There is a lot of people that I know that do that, and they do really, really well, and they've got a really, really loyal fan base. So there's no harm in that, but it's just covering all aspects. So it's everything. So remember, we need to consider the laptop we use, the internet connection, the camera we're going to use, the microphone and the speakers and how that affects it, what kind of microphone you want, the lighting, numbers and insurance, pre-recorded and how that affects the insurance, using software like OBS to do live feeds so you don't have to be there, how that things like which online provider you go with regards to Zoom or Microsoft or whatever it is you've been offered, because there's quite a few different platforms coming out now. I do get emails from many people saying try this platform, which I haven't, because I don't do a lot online anymore, but also working out how to extract those videos to make it into a permanent video that you can put in a library and things, and the consistency. If you consider all those fully, there should be it should be able to do really well with this. But it might be that you need to allow yourself a few months to build this up, because you have to build a following. And if you go up and you've done a month or a week of classes and you've hardly had anybody, and it's so disheartening, you think I'm never going to get anybody. But with everything, even if you're doing a live classes in a studio with people in front of you, or you're doing online, it takes time to build a following. It's very rare that it just sort of happens and everybody's is going crazy from you from the word go. It takes time for people to gel with you and you to attract and manifest those people. So don't be disheartened. And I would definitely suggest that you go back and listen to all the information I've given, because I know there is so much today that I've given you. But it's just some food for thought. And I'll try and put some links to the different things in the description, so that you can understand about the lighting and the microphones, etc., and things like that. Anyway, I think I'm going to have to stop it there, because I've gone for quite a long time. But I do wish you all the best, and if anybody wants to contact me or or discuss this particular topic further, do contact me with the information in the description below. Anyway, well, best of luck and take care. Bye-bye.